So, Nina, it's nice to meet you. It's the first time for me, and thank you to be here. We want this conservation in general will be meeting that about that young directors inform the young people who wants to make documentaries so they can learn something from this conservation. Unfortunately, this is online festival and they can take part in master classes. So it's a kind of a little bit of master class, So our questions. So I want you please give information about the release of tunnel in general, and later down we will discuss in detail by the questions. Is it okay?
Yes, that's fine. You are interested in the release when it was released and
Yeah, how the idea come to your mind that make it into a film and how it
all right. Okay, okay.
how it appeared from zero.
Okay, clear. It was like 6 years ago, a little bit more. Then me and my co-director, we decided to like start new film. Usually before starting it, like yes, we do kind of research in media and we are kind of in the course of what's going on, but usually the ideas come from visiting places and visiting like different locations and meeting people, talking to people. So that was in 2014. We decided to go to the Imereti region where I come from, but unfortunately I have never been there. My grandfather comes from that region, so we traveled there, and we traveled not the normal road, but we traveled like off road. So we visited the villages, like almost abandoned area in the quite mountainous place. And like the idea came from the stunning location itself, because we just like environment, and since there was no proper road there, the place was very authentic. And of course there were like different layers that were very interesting for us as a filmmakers, because we definitely understood that there is like very difficult kind of social context is very important there. And this small two-wagon train as the only linking transport to the outside world, very authentic old buildings, and the old station, which was built in the end of 19th century with its kind of very authentic feel. And this is where we just decided to stay for a while. And at the same time, in this very authentic setting, we saw the Chinese signs, some Chinese signs, which we did not quite understand how on earth we see here Chinese signs, because what is happening here. And then we realized that it's actually a big project that started in 2011. And it was stopped by the new government because it has some kind of ecological problems, and because of many problems that and damage this project could have done to the place, it was stopped for a while. And therefore we could not see Chinese, but we could see Chinese signs. And like this little thing somehow triggered the idea, we sensed that something is going to happen here. And we stayed there, we started absolutely different film, and then it transformed into something very different. So the point is that like very little thing can trigger idea that is transformed in something much more global. That's my point. Like it started as a very local story, but then actually it transformed into something which can be relevant to the outside world. So this balance between very local and at the same time global issues, I think it's very important for finding the right idea.
So then, can we say that you were looking for a topic, and you saw just Chinese signs there? And can you say it's just a coincidence, or for you?
Yes, it's in a way. I mean, yeah. The main thing for me as a filmmaker is just to be open to observe the reality around you and really be very attentive to every small details that you can see, and of course talk to people. We talk to people, and then it started like a snowball.
It's going bigger and bigger.
It started to become bigger and bigger, and then all these different layers, all these different problems, and of course it's very difficult to navigate through all these problems and to make film. Yeah, but yeah, that's right.
So actually, I didn't translate, unfortunately, Tunnel. That's why I haven't watched it before. But I did yesterday morning. So it was morning and I just woke up. But when I was watching it, I was really in it, the story. I really like it. I like the colors there. I like the villagers, the colors, harmony with nature. Even, that all trains, their colors, the nature there. It was so magical to me. But we will talk, of course, about Channel in detail later. But I have firstly general questions for young people. Nowadays, people have a misconception that documentary is just an informative interview or the other classic style of shooting. And can we say them as a can we say that they're really documentaries, or I mean, how wrong and how is it right to call them documentary? What do you think about it? This attitude comes from where? Do you think also comes from Soviet documentary style? I mean, in our region, I mean, Caucasus region, the people have this attitude. What do you think? Why they have this?
Yeah, and honestly, while studying also documentary history, I'm afraid it's not only perception of documentary filmmaking, not only in post-Soviet space, which definitely come from the propagandistic newsreels, and the idea that documentary is kind of extended reportage, right? But yeah, I think there are very different modes of documentary. It's not, I think, but it's kind of like starting from the Bill Nichols, who kind of differentiated different modes. Of course, expository mode and informational mode as a documentary such form also has its own place in the context of documentary history. But it's more kind of what we call now formatted or TV type of TV docs, right? While there is a huge space, huge room from so-called artistic or creative documentaries, when information is maybe just one layer of your film. But the most important for me in creative documentary is the experience you take your viewer to. And not because like there are lots of reportages or extended reportages, right? But
Yeah,
it's not
I mean
cinema,
that. Yeah.
right? Documentary film is first of all cinema because it's a film, right? It's not informational medium. It's, for me, it's more kind of like cinema. It's a visual medium and it's experiential medium. And if you decide, then why to do like a 90-minute piece when you can make a 5-minute reportage, right? If you are talking about information, or kind of investigative piece. For instance, yeah, creative documentary has, in my view, very different kind of mission to really create experience and take the viewer through this experience. For instance, we went to, and in documentary, like in creative documentary, perspective for me is very important, and the position from which you look at the events that are happening around. And it's first of all experience that I went through or my co-director went through. And we don't have any, we don't think it's an objective, 100% objective reality. We don't try to balance things at all,
Yeah,
like
I
information.
have your point, yeah. But what do you think? Here in Azerbaijan, the people just newly start to see the updates on a documentary film. How is it in Georgia? They watching documentaries and they can understand, oh, documentary is on progress and it has some updates. How is it in Georgia?
I think there are quite a large group now of young documentary filmmakers, and not only young, but like not that young and old, that approach documentary film genre as more kind of creative medium. Yeah, I think the audience is also kind of used, and from Azerbaijan as well, because I work with Azerbaijani and also Armenian and Georgian filmmakers. So I know there are quite a few in Azerbaijan as well who are producing
Yeah, we can feel it. That's true.
Documentaries. So I think we are reconsidering this perception of documentary film just being an informational medium. It's a cinema like any other genre. It's a cinema, so it needs to be a visual experience.
Yeah, sometimes the problem is that people can't separate it. What's the documentary film? What's just the documentary material? I mean, just the ordinary reportage. Sometimes they find that the reportage is boring. Then yeah, a documentary film is also boring. There's such a misunderstanding approach. Yeah, that's why I asked. And I have a question about if you can advise from which point should start a young, from where, if they have an idea, they want to make it into a documentary, from there they can start, if you advise.
If they already have an idea, right?
Yes, yeah. Have or doesn't have, doesn't matter.
No, I think you know why I'm asking, because I think it's really important, first of all, to watch as many films as possible, really to understand and feel the visual language. And then if you have an idea, I think nowadays, and especially with this virtual reality context, that we are all living in, there are so many development platforms that give actually very good opportunities for documentary filmmakers to develop their project. And sometimes from someone like our region, some of these platforms are free of charge. So the platform, for instance, you are publishing your festival, which is DA Films, like they have enormous resources to start with. But for instance, this film, and not only this film, how I started, maybe that can be example.
Yeah.
I used every possible platform of development to push somehow this project, because it's very important that people in the international industry identify with your project and somehow link you and your project and your country to each other. So I used Doc Leipzig platform, Doc Market. I used to I participated, I was lucky
I'm sorry. When did you start for the first time for directing documentary?
We started like,
I don't mean just for tunnel, I mean generally.
Yeah, I started, it's already 20 years ago.
Wow, quite a long time, you know.
But considering, as you see that I'm working like for 5-6 years maybe. So tunnel took me all in all 7 years. So as like, and it's our first feature length film, because previous films were short films, like 1 hour. It was, the previous one 1 hour, but others were just 30-minute films. So I think it's really important to go back to your question, to develop it on international platforms like Doc Leipzig, like ITFA Forum, ISDoc platform. Of course, it's difficult to be selected there. So your project should be already kind of developed in a way. So in that sense, first of all, you need to get money from your own country. For instance, the first pitching I attended was in my own country, because when you have already money from your own film center, then it's easier to pitch it on international forums. And I mean, we pitched it at ITFA, we pitched it at Edinburgh Forum, we pitched it in Hong Kong, because we were interested in Asian market. And of course, by the time the film was ready, it took us 5 years to go through all these kind of international forums. And I don't think that this time is lost, because these pitchings and these forums brought us international co-production and international TV partners, because the project was bought by ZDF Arte. The project was bought by NHK in Japan. The project got to German co-producer Hans Robert Eisenhower and his company Ventana Film, and the project got to Sales Agent Cats and Dogs. And this all happens through this kind of international forums. If I would be sitting here,
that's a great point, and it's nice that you touch it. So, and also my question was about that. For the, for first stage of research, the authors can afford the costs, or is it necessary that to have financial support from very, very beginning?
You know, it's difficult unless you are very, very well-known filmmaker, which I'm not. It's really difficult to get funds just with one sentence. You have to show something. So basically, in my case, I always start with our own funds. So we, of course, work for free, and we did it for more than a year. We were doing, because we have a studio and we have a camera, we were doing it without any funds, because this is how industry works. You need to show something. You need to make them sure that you know what you are doing and that you have a visual approach. Therefore, you need to have a trailer. And in order to have a trailer, you need to have in-depth research already, and somehow demonstrate not only what your story is about and who is your character, but also if you are good as a filmmaker, if you have a visual approach, if you know how to edit. And then sometimes they ask, for instance, ITFA Berta Fund, apart from trailer, they also asked 20-minute rough cut. So you need 20 minutes, not rough cut, but it's more kind of assembly. So you need to submit the assembly. So unfortunately, unless you are, I don't know, Kosakowski or someone really very well known, you need to work for free in the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So my next question about as I mentioned, many of people think that a documentary film is edited in very short time, like in 1 or a few days. And can you tell me please about your own film? For example, it looks your film appears to be spread over a long period of the time, almost 6 years, or 7 years. Yes. So I saw the seasons there: autumn, winter, spring, and again spring. So how much time did the observation process take, especially observing the characters?
You know, it depends what type of documentary you are producing, right? If you are doing an observational documentary and you are not intervening, because I do not exclude that in 1 week someone can produce a fantastic documentary, but it's different kind of form, it's different type of style the filmmaker works. I think it really depends on what kind of documentary it is. Films like ours, where observation and not really intervening and not really manipulating with the content is the priority. Of course, it's extended in time. And of course, I was not there for every day during 6 years, but like we were filming like maybe 3-4 days every month. We were there. If something was happening, of course we were there. But even if nothing was happening, we were going there to see what's happening. There were days that we were sitting there just living without really filming, because it's not all the time something happens. But overall, with this observational filmmaking, we had like 120 minutes of material, like hours of material. So it's huge.
I'm sorry, Nina. Is that observing style is your style generally, or you just choose that only for Tana?
No, generally this is, I mean, we had some kind of more interactive stuff earlier with English teacher, because we kind of used interviews with him. But with Tunnel, we decided to be more distant. And I really enjoy doing that, because I think the reality is really much more interesting than anything my mind can make up. And like, because I really like to be ready for the surprises the reality suggests us. I really like this idea of capturing the life as it happens, because this is what I enjoy doing. I mean, it does not mean that that's the only way to work, but this is what makes me happy, and I wanted to experience without too much involvement as a character. I prefer to be distant and really have this freedom and pleasure of noticing things that will become big later.
Yeah, I say. And I also wonder, and I'm sure that the audience also will wonder, that what kind of difficulties did you have during observation? I mean, with the local community or during shooting? Did they have camera fear? And because it seems like the place is quite rural, they are villagers and they are maybe not used to get work with cameras. How did you spend that time with, I mean, the adaptation process with the locals?
Yeah, I think that's generally one of the most interesting aspects of documentary filmmaking,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
For me,
How
yeah.
how you build that trust between the community. In our case, we don't have one specific character. It's more like chorus. It's more like community. So I think it took time, but at first we were perceived as a TV crew, and they were thinking, oh, they will film and they will go. And then we came again, and then we came again. And then they started joking, are you making a soap operas? So, and then they thought it's not really serious. They're filming, but we don't see it on TV. So you are not important people. But then another year went on and we were there again. And so they were,
Oh.
so they were
Yeah,
making jokes
it takes
about,
years.
and then
I can't
another
imagine.
year, and then they just realized there is something really serious, because these people come every time in the middle of nowhere, spend time with us. And so the trust was built somehow. And to be honest, when the film was ready and we showed it to the community, we went there to the village and made the open screening to the villagers. And they were really thankful. They were really thankful. They said they could never understood what we were doing for such a long time there, and that they were really. It was great experience, finally to prove to them that we were there not for soap operas and not for TV. That we are not just exposing them, but we are really want to viewers to experience the community they represent and that we are on their side. The other aspect was Chinese.
Yeah, yeah. But what about confidence? How did you make the confidence between you and them? I mean, how did they can rely you? What happened there? And I'm sorry, do you have any interesting experience that you had during on this process, the making relationship between them, you and them?
Um, I think the how they trusted us and confidence to. I think again it was time, and it was the way, because it's not only us who were observing them, right? It was them observing us, how we work, and they were seeing that we work really hard. We were there when it was very hot. We were there when it was very cold. We were there when it was very, very difficult. So they were observing us, and it was like mutual process. And I think it does not come. I don't know. We did not have any agreement. It was just you feel either it works or not, and then it's also this is how I choose the characters. For instance, the station master, we
Yeah,
filmed him once, we filmed him twice, we filmed him third time.
yeah,
And then you feel that this guy is comfortable with camera.
yeah.
He's quite confident guy. So for me, that's how I understood he's a good character
Yeah,
because
he is like a main character to me when I watch a film, and he has a wonderful humor sense, I think. And he was really like, there was a drama and humor together. There was a harmony, and it was really wonderful. I like that part. And the beers. Attack to him, it was so surprising. So very surprising accident happened there. Yeah.
yeah. So can you imagine? Even when the bear attacked him, and we went to see him in the hospital, he did not say no. We did not film him because he was in a terrible, terrible condition. We did not really think he would survive. And of course, we were not filming at that very moment because situation was very,
Yeah.
very kind of dramatic. But he himself never say no to us.
Yeah, and
So this,
you were also at his house, and it's quite intimacy, but he let that. Yeah, so it shows that how there is a good relationship between he
Yeah.
and you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a full trust. There was not even a minute when he said, "I don't trust you." That's very important.
Yeah, and what about Chinese? They're also friends. How was the relation with them and you? Because I can see that the Chinese attitude is different than locals. So what? And you didn't. It looks like you didn't focus much on them. And
Yeah.
what about them?
Yeah, so when we started, of course, with Chinese because that was what triggered my interest. But after the first shooting, we realized that there is no way we have access to them because they did not allow access. Every time you want to shoot in their community, they are calling to the head office in Khashoggi, and head office is calling to China, and then it was just
I
impossible.
see.
Every time they were seeing us, they were stopping us from filming. So then, after realizing that we just don't have access, we decided to transform it into our artistic decision, to see them the way community sees them, like on a distance, because they were not really integrated. They were quite isolated in their own kind of community.
So, and I saw some scenes that there was tension, aggression. Even they were fighting, they hurt each other. It was a atmosphere of conflict. What did you feel then? And you were trying to shooting, you and your cameraman. It was hard to shoot at that moment, or how did you deal with that?
Yeah, it was actually quite hard because when the first protest starts, locals were thinking that we would help them somehow. We will take it to the TV stations and we will kind of, we were perceived more as a journalist. And as soon as they realized that we are not kind of information people, they started to be a little bit aggressive towards us. So you are filming, but what's the result of your filming? And in the moments of crisis, it's really difficult to face the situation that people think you can somehow help, but actually you can't. So that was quite difficult to overcome. Why then you are filming if you can't change anything? So from both sides, it was quite a tension. But yeah, it worked somehow. They realized that they should give us access because in a long term, it still matters, to document these type of things. Because then there were other cameras from TV stations that really were much more involved in daily coverage because we were not doing a daily coverage of the protests.
Yeah, I see. And here I have a question, but it's not my own personal question. It's Aygün Aslan's question. She's also a film critic in Azerbaijan. So she has she said that there are such shots in the film that the villagers sometimes come face to face with the camera, and they feel a deep despair in their eyes, as if they're asking for help from camera, from you. And she said that I also felt helpless at that time. I felt like I didn't want to be right there at that moment. So as a director or as a human, did you feel this feeling also, or you were just observing? And so,
Yeah.
so is there any touchable situation happened there for
Yeah,
you?
of course, as I actually previously mentioned it already, because it's really difficult when not only as a documentary filmmaker, but as a journalist as well, because I have a journalist in television reporting. I have a background in television reporting. And when you are covering really dramatic situations and people look at you and trust you can help, and actually you can't do much. Of course, I'm not a activist filmmaker. I'm not the filmmaker that is using camera for the impact campaign or kind of creating some activism activity. But of course, in other way, I think that apart from filming them, we were also there and talking with them and trying to find solutions together. We were part of the community and we were not on the opposite side. When we were filming politicians or we were filming local government, we were on the side and we were asking questions on behalf.
Sorry, did you have permission for that? With
Sorry?
the governmental part, they allowed to you to shut the process, or they were judging you or asking questions? So
sometimes it was difficult, but actually we were not asking permission from government. We were asking permission from railway department, which is not which is part of the kind of government. But yes, they gave us access to the railway, because you cannot film anything on the railway unless you have permission, because it's a strategic kind of object. But in the film, I don't have direct communication with the government, right? We film them from the perspective of locals, what they see. So, but I think it's quite how to say, quite informative, the way government treats people.
yeah.
And since villagers and locals were on our side whenever local government was coming, or like higher government representatives were coming, they could not stop us from filming because villagers were with us and we were on the side of villagers. So in a way, I think our camera was a catalyst of government being accountable to the locals. So in that sense, I don't think that we were doing nothing in terms of helping them. But of course, on a larger scale, I don't believe filmmakers, I mean, we can save the world. What we can do is to document it and give our own perspective and let people be noticeable and let people that their voices are heard. This is what I think we can do. I don't think we can claim we can change the world. I think we more work for changing how people perceive things, including government, because government and those in power, politicians, should see that behind every decision they make, whatever progressive this decision is, there are humans behind who suffer, you know, and this is what we wanted to show. Because however this big project progressive can be, it has lots of somehow, it happens on the expense of someone, and on whose expense it happens. This is what we primarily should think about. So
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nina, because for your sharing your experience. We really wonder it, because here in Azerbaijan we also sometimes try to make documentaries, but you know the official representatives doesn't allow when we had some problems, and we are looking for solutions how we can get allow and say. So your experience is so valuable for us. And what about after shooting? Which stage comes? And did you start to edit film at the assembly table too? I mean, you did montage or not, or did you look for a fund again, or you just immediately start to editing?
Actually, since my co-director Vano Arsenishvili, who was a cameraman, he was the main editor himself. So as soon as we were coming to back from the shooting, we were starting to assemble the material to see what we have.
Yeah.
So it started from the very first year of shooting. We did not wait until the very end. No, we were trying to see if we have scenes, we got money for editing much later, when we almost edited ourselves, kind of made a first assembly. So money comes much later. It's very difficult to wait until the money comes, but in our case, it's easier because it was Vano who was doing it. If you hire an editor who is not part of the crew, of course, it's difficult to start without.
Sorry, you were editor at the same time, or you were only
we were both editing. Yeah,
yeah,
he was the key editor.
Yeah, and this film is a co-directing product, and the other director, as you mentioned, is Vano Arsenishvili. Yeah, and can you talk about, please? You were together while you said actually, but you were together all the shootings or only in everything, and how did you both cooperate? Because nowadays cooperating, I also think it's not very common. And how did you share your rules? It was improvisation, or everyone has a certain rule in advance?
Yeah, in mine and Vano's case, I think it's quite interesting because I come from a journalistic background. I'm interested in current affairs, and I'm very sensitive to like big themes, as a former journalist. While Vano comes from the fiction film background, he's more kind of, more reflective. And I think this mixture of our backgrounds in documentary film works really well because I have this nose.
Sorry, is it an advantage for you or disadvantage?
Both.
I see.
So, because I'm interested in everything what happens, and I can be somehow move to something else because I think big story is developing something there. But I'm studying, I'm learning to be much more distanced as a filmmaker rather than a journalist because I want to be in the middle of things, still. While Vano has more kind of artistic approach, and he's not interested in daily kind of things. Therefore, this mixture really helped us. I was kind of more driving what are our themes, who are our characters, but Vano was more concerned with how we are representing it. So he was filming, he was a cameraman. And in observational shooting, it's not always the director who tells how exactly you shoot, because sometimes we were just following the action. And I was doing sound and he was doing camera. And it's very intuitive process. And since we are working together for more than 20 years already, I mean, we don't even talk to each other or on the set. It's of course we talk beforehand, but we never talk when we are filming. We are absolutely silent. We just don't communicate on the field. We talked before and we talk after. And of course we fight, we quarrel a lot during editing. But I think it's very, very good to have different eye, who is very critical to what I think and vice versa. It really helps not to be blown away with some crazy ideas you have, because she will always stop you.
Sorry, what about, will you do co-operating again in the future? So you said that I stopped with tunnel. So in future, you will again do cooperating with another director, or?
Yes, right now we already start our next film and we are co-directing it.
Nice.
I think for documentary filmmaker, especially when you don't have money in the beginning, You really need someone who is really devoted and who feels authorship to the film. Otherwise, it's really difficult to attract someone without paying them, you know. And we have very small crew, me, Vano, and another person, sometimes Anna Davitashvili, who was joining us as a sound person, but not always. When we could not afford it, we were doing it ourselves. So I think for observational filmmaking, it's really important not to have huge crew, so that you intrude into someone's life. It should be really very personal. And for us, it's really very personal.
Yeah, I see. And what about in the editing process? Did you think the film changed completely during editing, or you were planned it in advance? So I mean, you had the shapes in your mind, and you know sometimes the director decide to work with an editor to see the story differently, and you know with that third fresh eye. So
Yeah.
you use that or?
And I think it's not bad. It's very good because documentary film, unlike fiction film, is done actually on editing stage. Because when you have such a huge material and you need to edit like just 90 minutes, of course, every editor it can be 100 different films. And for me, documentary film, of course, is done on editing during the editing phase. But we prefer, for us, directing on editing stage is very important. So we could not give our material to someone else. So we decided to edit ourselves because I think this is one of the most interesting process, really rediscovering your story all over again. I don't exclude that if it could be much better film if a good someone else would edit it, if we could hire very good editor. I do not exclude that it could be much more successful film, but it would not be mine. So for me, it's important to have my film. So it's not only about having a good film, it's only about having my film because it's my I want to have this experience that editing gives us, and this is the same for Vano because I think he's really very, very good editor, much better than I am. Therefore, we have this kind of disadvantage of editing our own films, but of course it's better financially because editors and good editors are very, very expensive.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. And let's talk about the films released to the festivals and the agreements with the sales agencies and financial part. Are the foreign agencies interested in buying films from this region? I mean, from the Caucasus and also cover the distribution.
I think yes. I think yes. They are very, very interested. I mean, they are interested in having good films, especially not from not only, I think it's much more trendy now not to concentrate on Western European or US production. Yeah. And we observe that more and more festivals, big festivals, become more and more open from so-called third countries. I think big festivals, we have much more chances now to the big festivals because they changed their policy than that we have before. So we were lucky to be selected by ITFA, which I think that 10 years ago, we had a very little chance. But because the leadership of the festival has changed and the perception of the good filmmaking has changed a little bit. And this discovery that there is outside world there, and there are filmmakers that they are maybe developing some much more authentic films that Western filmmakers producing in the third world. I think that's very interesting, and therefore we are discovering now more and more unknown but extremely talented filmmakers from I don't know, even from Azerbaijan. There were 2 films in competition in the program of ITFA when we were there, which was not the case earlier, right? And for ITFA Berta Fund, out of 5 projects, 2 were Georgian films, because with us, Salome Jashi also won the ITFA Berta production money. So I think that gives us quite many opportunities, and we should really not underestimate our own possibilities. Because our countries and the issues we are facing and the characters we can film here, and this is extremely rich environment for filmmaking, and we should not really underestimate that. And because nowadays, big festivals are fed up with this polished, formatted, well-told stories. We are all tired of that, and we are looking for new formats, maybe not so polished, but we are looking for some type of new storytelling, right? And I think it's the chance for young people to try to somehow push their own vision, because I think they will be noticed. Or at least this is my feeling.
Yeah, but what about which problems can they have about co-production or post-production? Or what about you? Did you have which difficulties about post-production or co-production or with
It's
funding?
good. It's good. Our strategy was not to have co-producer while we were still in production, because when you have a co-producer, of course, your very strong co-producer can push you different direction. So we preferred to be quite free while we were still in shooting stage. We only made commitment with the co-producer when we have finished shooting and when we knew what we are doing. So we actually suggested the film we wanted to make, and he agreed on the film we had. So this is also tricky, I think, at which stage you decide to commit to co-production. And of course, international forums help you to find these co-producers. Otherwise, if you are young and nobody knows you, it's difficult that a good production company commits you. And the same goes with the sales. As soon as we were selected for ITFA, we were approached by, I don't know, up to 10 different sales agents that wanted to take the film, because ITFA is already a good kind of filter that film goes through. And so they somehow have more guarantee that this film can be successful. So I think it's better to commit to sales agent and, or at least this is how I think, I might be totally wrong, to commit on much later stage when you know exactly what you want to do. But of course it means that money will come later.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, if they are young and they don't have quite big connection with Europe, but they can use the forms. Yeah, you said just researching on internet and find them and write them. Yeah, you mean?
Yes, of course, they can look into the database of sales agents and co-production companies, but I think the best way is to start with developing schemes, and when to try to get to one of the international forums, and there it's much more easier to meet co-producers, sales agents, and TV companies, rather than going independently and looking for someone else, because it's already kind of filtered.
Yeah, thank you for your sharings about production, post-production or co-production. So, and we have questions again from Aygun Aslan. She wonders what happened to the village in the end. Did the tunnel end? And what about the villagers, about their houses? What happened to them? Can you inform us a little bit? Because I really wonder.
You can't believe, but the project is in the same stage that we left it.
Oh, really?
Because, yes, because of the landslide started, and they by then discovered that it's actually not possible to go the way they planned. They now try to change the route. And now villagers who were waiting for 6 years that their houses will be demolished, now
so they're living still there?
Yes, they're living, some of them. I mean, the village we were concentrating on. So this project has big difficulties due to the fact that it was political decision first and not based on proper geological kind of analysis of the place. And, this is how it goes. It's political decision first, and then research starts, while it should be vice versa. The social aspect and the environmental aspect should go first, while it was not the case. And this is why the fate of the village is still unknown.
Yeah.
And this is exactly why we ended up in a dark tunnel, because it's like going on a circle,
Oh.
There's no resolution. It's a never-ending story.
So you thought that you can't wait. Yeah. So
Sorry?
you thought that you can't wait for the next year, so you decide to stop shooting. Yeah?
Yes, we were waiting for quite a long, but then we decided that actually this is a story that there is no end, and that's our experience.
Yeah, thank you, Nino. That was the last question, but I have also my own question. So I just wonder, what about the scenario? I think there are two styles. Sometimes you're writing something and going to shoot it, and you have planned your in mind, yeah, I will shoot this. But sometimes you're just shooting as much as big materials, and in editing room, the scenario starts to appear. What about you? What's your style about scenario? I really wonder it if you.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it scenario. I would more call it a treatment.
Yeah.
Which I personally write, because first of all, I need this treatment in order to get funds, right? Because all funders are asking for treatment. But we don't, I think in documentary film, especially in observational documentary film, it's impossible to know exactly what you want to shoot and what you what you don't want to shoot. On the contrary, the idea is that you find this film idea, you find your point of interest, and within the point of interest, you are open to the development. The main task for me of a documentary filmmaker, like in the style of we are working, is to be as prepared and as open without any preconceived ideas what the story will be to the reality. The more you are open, the better for me. But of course, I have like the main points of interest. I know I'm interested in platform. I know I'm interested in this character. But it does not mean that I will not change the direction. And then we will address these dramaturgical problems on the stage of editing. For me, it's important not to be too much stuck to whatever you have written. This is the whole concept of observational documentary filmmaking for us.
Yeah, I see. Thank you so much. So those were my questions. Do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's almost 1 hour, so I think we did a good job, really, because on
Thank you.
time. So thank you again. That was really enjoyable, and I learned much from you, and it was great pleasure to know you. So
Yeah,
I hope we will meet one day again, because I also worked with I think you are also the coordinator or manager in Çaykhana platform, yeah? Yeah, I
yes.
also worked with them. I hope we will work again. At the present, you are there, so yeah?
Yeah, but I'm curating short documentary film production.
Ah, okay, I see. I also have plans to shoot documentary. I hope
Yeah.
I will meet you in person too. Thank you so much again. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, and I wish your festival good luck, because I think you are doing very interesting and very, very important job. So
Yeah.
good luck.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right.
Have a nice day again.
Bye. Bye.